Lila clutched her notebook tightly as she walked into the classroom. It was small, worn, and filled with pages upon pages of sketches and poems she had never shown a single soul. This notebook wasn't just paper and ink. It was her world, a secret garden of thoughts and dreams that belonged only to her. As she approached her desk, a cold dread washed over her. Her classmate Jenna was sitting there, her fingers casually flipping through the sacred pages of Lila's notebook. Lila's breath caught in her throat. "Wow, I didn't know you wrote this," Jenna said, a smirk playing on her lips. She held up a page with one of Lila's most personal poems. "It's kind of weird." Jenna's eyes scanned the classroom, a mischievous glint in them. "Maybe I'll just show everyone." Lila froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The world seemed to shrink, the sounds of the classroom fading into a dull roar. All she could imagine was the pointing fingers, the mocking laughter, the whispers echoing her deepest insecurities. Her private thoughts, her most vulnerable creations, were about to become a spectacle for everyone's amusement. She felt small, invisible, and utterly powerless. A wave of shame and anger crashed over her. Her first instinct was to run, to snatch the notebook, tear every single page into 1,000 tiny pieces, and bury the evidence of her creativity forever. If no one knew, no one could judge. If she hid her voice, no one could make fun of it. It seemed like the only way to stop the pain, to make the suffocating feeling go away. Hiding felt safe. Hiding felt like the only option. But as she stood there, paralyzed by fear, something inside her stirred, a tiny, flickering flame of defiance. It was a feeling she hadn't recognized before. Was this what courage felt like? Not a loud, roaring fire, but a quiet, stubborn whisper that refused to be silenced. She thought of all the hours she had spent pouring her heart onto those pages. The joy she felt when a sketch came to life or a line of poetry finally clicked into place. Was she really going to let someone else's casual cruelty destroy all of that? Taking a shaky breath, Lila found her voice. "Stop," she said. The word was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the air. Jenna looked up, surprised. Lila's voice grew stronger, fueled by a surge of protective instinct for her own work. "It's mine. You have no right to share it." Jenna's smirk faltered. She laughed, a short, dismissive sound, but Lila's sudden, uncharacteristic confidence had clearly caught her off guard. She had expected tears, not a challenge. For a moment, they just stared at each other, a silent battle of wills playing out over the small, worn notebook. Finally, Jenna shrugged. "Whatever," she muttered, tossing the notebook back onto the desk with a thud. She got up and walked away, leaving Lila standing there. Her body still trembling, but her spirit feeling strangely whole. That moment was a turning point. The fear hadn't vanished. In fact, her heart was still racing. But for the first time, she had faced it head-on instead of letting it control her. The encounter with Jenna left a deep impression on Lila. It made her think about all the time she had spent hiding, convinced that her creativity was something to be ashamed of. The following week, the school announced a class talent session. It was a low-key event where students could share a skill or a piece of work. In the past, Lila would have shrunk into her chair, praying the teacher wouldn't call on her. But this time was different. The memory of her standing up to Jenna replayed in her mind. She had protected her work, but what was the point of protecting something if it was never meant to see the light of day? With a mix of terror and determination, Lila signed up. She decided to share one of her poems, the very same one Jenna had called weird. The night before the session, she barely slept. Doubts swelled in her head. What if Jenna was right? What if everyone laughed? What if they thought she was strange? The fear was a loud, convincing voice in her head, telling her to back out, to stay safe in her shell. But another, quieter voice was there too, the voice that had spoken up in the classroom. It reminded her that her words had value, that her perspective was unique. It reminded her that true strength wasn't about never feeling scared. It was about doing it anyway. When her name was called, Lila walked to the front of the class, her legs feeling like jelly. She clutched the piece of paper in her hand, the words blurring before her eyes. The room was silent, every eye on her. She took a deep breath, picturing her secret garden, the one place where she felt completely herself. And then she began to read. Her voice started as a tremor, but as she spoke the words she had so carefully crafted, it grew steadier, more confident. She poured her feelings into the rhythm and flow of the poem, sharing a piece of her soul with the 20-something faces staring back at her. She spoke of loneliness, of hope, of seeing beauty in small overlooked things. When she finished, a heavy silence hung in the air. For a heart-stopping moment, Lila thought her worst fears had come true. But then, the silence was broken by applause. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was genuine and warm. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. Her classmates were smiling. Some were even nodding in understanding. Even Jenna, sitting in the back, looked genuinely surprised, her usual smirk replaced by a look of grudging respect. After class, a boy she had never spoken to before approached her. "That was amazing," he said, his eyes sincere. "I never knew you were so talented. It really made me think." Walking home that day, Lila felt lighter than she had in years. The notebook in her bag no longer felt like a secret to be guarded, but a treasure to be shared. She realized that the hardest part of her journey hadn't been writing the poems or sketching the drawings. The hardest part had been hiding them. The fear of judgment had built a cage around her, and for years she had willingly stayed inside. She learned a powerful lesson that day. Courage wasn't some magical quality that brave people were born with. It wasn't about being fearless. Courage was that small, stubborn voice that tells you to take one more step, even when you're terrified. It was about feeling the fear, acknowledging it, and then refusing to let it win. It was about choosing to open the lock on your own notebook and letting your voice, however shaky, be heard. And in sharing her voice, Lila didn't just find acceptance from others. She finally found it within herself. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that inspires you to find your own voice. See you next time.